This is Analog Spectrum. Get ready to hear words and stuff that will honestly blow your mind.
Recording in progress. Yeah, we're recording. What do you know?
This is Analog Spectrum. You have Tony with you tonight, and it is nighttime where I'm at, and I'm here with Doug. Doug, say hello.
No, I will not say hello.
Oh my God, he's a child.
I know. I'm a man child.
So
yeah, hey, guess what? It's nighttime here too. I'm in New Orleans.
Yeah. So I just got back from New Orleans, and Doug were like two ships passing in the night, and two ships passing in the night. Ironically, it's another Coast Guard podcast.
Hey, what do you know?
That's a thing.
They're ships, not boats. Just remember that.
Yeah, I guess ships, boats, cutters.
I know. I never cared. I always hated when people did that.
Yeah, I did too.
I never cared. Yeah.
So when we last left off, I think I was still talking a little bit about the Harriet Lane. I hadn't quite gone to A school, and we were a little bit all over the place. And I was thinking about this when we were offline. What I really like to do is because these Coast Guard podcasts, I think we struck gold with this, at least for us. Everybody else can give a shit, but for us, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's fun.
So I want to get to the point where both you and I met up for the very first time in Key West, but obviously our time in the Coast Guard prior to that is different. So I'm going to cover a little bit about my Harriet Lane stuff I didn't talk about last time, and then I really do want to make this a Doug-centric podcast. Okay, I want you to talk about your A school experiences and so forth. But real quick, a couple stories I wanted to tell about the Harriet Lane. First. Everybody wonders about the Coast Guard doing drug busts. The thing with most cutters, especially in the Caribbean, they'll usually sit in those areas between the islands, like, between Cuba and Hispaniola, which is where Haiti is. And those are called choke points, and you wait for drugs to come by. And the boat didn't have a lot of drug busts when I was on there. But one time, I don't even know where the hell we were, but a plane flew over, and I guess the big white boat with the big orange stripe, they didn't freaking know what they were seeing. And they started chucking cocaine out their plane, and the cocaine actually started splashing in the water all around us. And we pulled 2.5 tons of cocaine out of the ocean. So while I was on the Harriet Lane, we made a drug bust, 2.5 tons of cocaine. And yeah, that happened. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
They bring it up on the fantail. They secure the fantail. Everybody can go out and take pictures with it, which I did. The one thing I did do that you weren't supposed to do is we actually had the plan of the day. And the plan of the day, if anybody's curious, is just like our newspaper underway. And it's just like this one sheet that kind of tells where we are and what our sailing schedule is going to be, maybe what the next stop is. And you're not supposed to take it off the ship or off the mess deck, but I saved that one because it talked about how much of a drug bust it was. And it was 2.5 tons. That was pretty cool. Okay. And other things we kind of mentioned the last time about standing watch. If anybody's kind of curious about what you do on a ship underway, if you're part of what's called deck force, which is individuals that take care of the boat from the engine room up, or if you're part of the what do they call them? Engineer? I guess it's engineering department. Yeah, everybody, they take care of the engines and all the stuff that takes care of the boat, like the water, the evaporators that make water and all that kind of stuff. You stand watch underway. That's what you do. And usually it's 4 hours.
Sleep, stand watch.
You eat, sleep, stand watch. Yeah. And there's other people on board that don't do anything. Like there's, there's
like the medical people.
Yeah, right. And they're sometimes referred to as luggage. I'm okay with that. But when I was on the Icebreaker, which is a story coming up many episodes later, I didn't stand any. I stood no watch. I didn't stand watch in port. I didn't stand watch underway. But when bad things happen, they needed me. Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention about being on the Harriet Lane was because I wasn't going boatswain mate. Like they basically treated me like the lesser of the deck force. Like if you wanted a real pathway for the excitement and deck force and so forth, you said you were going to strike boatswain mate. Boatswain mate didn't have an A school, and so you had to strike it. And if you were striking boatswain mate, then the people running deck force took a real interest in you, and they like to do things like drive the small boats and do all the fun stuff. But my whole job is painting and so forth, and of course
scraping barnacles.
Right. And standing watch, when I stood watch, I would do lookout and I would basically a helm, which is the person you don't drive the boat. You're basically the steering wheel. They tell
Mm.
you
Mm.
which way to go and you move a stick and you point the boat in that direction. So you don't have any say where it goes. They just tell you where to go.
Mm.
And that was about it. So the Harry Lane, 11 months. And at the end of 11 months, around I think 1990, 1991, late 1990, I went to Petaluma. So, all right. So tell me about your A school experience. And when did you go to A school?
I joined the Coast Guard in '83, and then got in August, and then I got down to Key West as my first duty station in late '83, maybe late '83, probably like whatever it is, October or something. Um, but I was on the aids and navigation team for a little while, and then I think we talked about this last time. I went and worked as a mess cook, and I actually started enjoying myself, and so I put in for cook school, and I stayed. I stayed there for, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 more months before I went to A school, which was also in Petaluma. And I had no clue what I was getting myself into. But the thing that I always remember the most about A school is that is the first time in my life that I actually was learning something that I chose. So in other words, I was not a good student in high school. I was, yeah, go. You're going to say
No,
something?
I was going to, before we get too far into this, tell everybody when we say A school, what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't even know what the A stands for, but it's a,
I don't think it stands for anything. I think it's just it's A because it's the first school you go to. Like there's A school, and then there's C schools that come later.
I guess, yeah. So there's no B schools that I've ever heard of,
I don't think so.
but no.
Yeah.
So all it is for is your primary job training. So I knew nothing about being a cook. I went to A school. I came out. I was an apprentice cook. Like I was, just you learn the absolute basics, and then you go and on the job and you start learning the skill and the trade and all of that stuff. So
Yeah, and the majority of because so the Coast Guard has enlisted and has officers. The enlisted, they all have to when they come out of boot camp, they're not rated, which means they don't really have a job. Then they pick a job. The vast majority of them have an A school. I think the only one when we were in that you could that was strike alone was boatswain mate, and there were some other
I think
ones.
so.
Yeah, and you could strike. You could. That's why I asked you one time. You could actually strike SS cook. You could, but you
Hmm.
went to A school.
Yeah, what strike means is you don't actually go to school, you just learn on the job. And then
Apprenticeship.
eventually you apprenticeship. Yeah. And once you gain enough knowledge, you go and you sit down and take a test. And if you pass the test, then they promote you as if you had gone to A school.
Right.
But
Yeah. And you take tests and all that kind of stuff. The one thing
yeah,
the military does really well is test you. They have all kinds of
yes.
freaking tests. And yeah, when you come out of school, you end up usually getting promoted. Not always, but usually promoted to like a petty officer and so forth. So, but the A school and every A school is different length. It's a tech school.
Mm,
You're not learning English. You're not learning math unless maybe in
mm.
some you learn some math, but it's very directed towards a job.
Towards your profession. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Army has like AIT. The Air Force, I think, has AIT. A school is what the Navy and the Coast Guard have. Okay, so
Right.
off. So when did you go? When did you go to?
It was, I don't even think I was in Key West for 6 months at that point because when I went to A school, I was still in E2. You graduate boot camp as an E2, you start as an E1, and you come out of boot camp as an E2. And I was still in E2 when I went to A school. Because I graduated A school as an E3. But with typically you wait long enough, most people graduate A school as E4. But anyway, but the thing that I remember the most about A school, other than a couple funny stories that I'll tell you, I sort of made myself laugh thinking about these stories. Um, but I remember that's the first time that I was doing something educational that I actually chose to do. So I was a terrible student in high school. I barely graduated. I hated it. But for like a light switch went off or something, man. It was like it clicked, and I went to A school, and I was studying this stuff that I was actually interested in, and I graduated first in my class because I applied myself, and so I was always real happy with that, and I kept that trend. Every school I went to after that, I ended up graduating first. But anyway, yeah. So A school was fun. There was a lot of for cooks anyway. There was a lot of early mornings. Of course, you're making breakfast for everybody, and it takes a couple hours to prep it. So you got to get up and do all of that stuff. And they literally are teaching you the first couple of weeks is classroom, and they're teaching you like how many quarts is in a gallon, how many pints is in a quart, how many cups is in a pint, and so on. You have to learn all that real basic math on how to break down recipes. So all of that, and I excelled. I was good at that. And then, yeah, you just start going through, and they have like classes prior to you that are cooking the meals for the people on the base. And then the junior classes come in, and then maybe one day we'll just do like the potato dish or something. And then the next day we'll come in and we'll do the vegetables or dessert or whatever it is. And then eventually you get more and more of that. And by the time you graduate, you're cooking meals for the entire campus, there's a lot. I mean, there's like four or five schools there, which is, several hundred people. But as you go through, they're kind of strict. You have to follow these recipes to the T. And I can't remember what I was making, but I looked at this as like, this is no big deal, man. It wasn't like scientific. I was baking or something. I was making like green beans or whatever it was. And it called for, I don't know, a quarter cup of butter, let's say. So I didn't measure the butter. I just looked at the stick, whacked off a little thing, and I threw it in there. And my instructor saw me, and he came over. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm making green beans." He said, "Can you measure that butter?" I said, "No, I eyeballed it." He says, "Oh, you eyeballed it?" "Yeah." He says, "I'll tell you what. When we're done with lunch, you're going to go eyeball those trash cans." So I had to go out back after lunch and literally scrub the inside of all of the trash cans out in the back of the dumpster area. So I didn't eyeball shit anymore after that.
I've joked around about him in a previous podcast, but everything's got a recipe card, right? Everything.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I found interesting was that it was my first real experience in the military, like really the group dynamics, the human group dynamics, because I was the ATON team. There was like 4 or 5 guys, and I had one roommate, and I didn't really socialize with anybody else on base at that point. But when I got into cook school, there was like 20 or 30 of us in this class, and we all were in a barracks, and you had a roommate, and we all hung out together and studied together and all that. And I developed this little flirtatious relationship with one of the girls in the class, and her and I think it started when we kept passing each other for number one in the class. So I was number one, and then the test would roll around this week, and then she would outdo me, and then I would be 2 and she'd be 1, and the next week I'd overtake her. So we developed this little rivalry, and that turned into a little like, hey, I kind of like this girl, and she kind of liked me. Anyway, the funny story is somebody had a car. And in A school, that's a huge deal. Like you're totally trapped on the base for however, whatever, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever it is. And so somebody, I don't know if it's a friend or an uncle or something, somebody had a car and they were going to go to the beach. And I grew up in Florida. I thought, shit, we're going to the beach, man. But it's Northern California. And the beach is not, you don't go swimming in Northern California. It's freaking freezing. So anyways, they're like, yeah, man, we're going to the beach. Who wants to go? I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'll go. Let me invite this. I'm going to invite this girl. This is my chance, So I invited her, and she's like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And I'm hand on heart, Tony, this is a true story. We meet up in the little rec area where everybody was getting together to go to the beach. And she came out in a pair of shorts, of course. We're going to the beach, right? And the shirt, like a sleeveless kind of a shirt or something. And this chick had more armpit hair and leg hair than I did. And I'm like, and I was all of 19 at this point, And so I said to her, I'm like, I was so stupid. I'm like, oh, you're going to shave your legs before you go to the beach? And she's like, and she says, no, I don't shave my legs. And then she raised her hand. I could see the pit hair. She had like this big, massive ball of pit hair. And I'm like, oh, I made some stupid reaction anyways. And guess what? That relationship happened to be over in that very instant. So, yeah, I got the evil eye and probably a few words that I can't remember. But yeah, she turned around and stormed off. And so I looked at my buddy and was like, dang, guess I'm not going to the beach.
Damn.
So that was it. Yeah, that ended that. But the capper is I kicked her ass. I ended up graduating first. So
Was the conversation with her always over after that? Does that never, we never got,
oh
never
yeah,
got past that?
I
Okay.
don't even know that she ever even talked to me after that. So
Ah, man.
apparently she was an early feminist. That yeah, I didn't know shit about shit, man.
But even then, it's kind of like, I get where you're coming from, but also I also know that you had that young, very very early 20-year-old brain where, stuff just gobbledygook just kind of falls out your mouth. It happened to me
Yeah,
too, right?
no filter. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no filter, right? And so you have your preference, but it's also like, I probably could have handled it better, So
Yeah, probably.
yeah, so I can even tell you, like, back when I was much younger, I regret some of the things I've said to people.
Oh yeah, because she's just an idiot. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm an idiot. I was an idiot.
this is why it's difficult for me to take young people seriously when they're bitching about whatever they're bitching about today. I'm like, okay, now I know what my dad was talking about. Like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about.
Sure. Also, like, I've actually run into some young people that seem to be pretty lucid, and I'm kind of like,
Well,
wow.
your nephew, for one, the bike rider that
Yeah,
we talked to,
yeah,
that dude is so smart as a whip, man.
yeah, yes, yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so yeah, I left there. I graduated first, and I was proud of that, and I did real good. And I got stationed on the Venturous after that, which is out of LA, which is I was happy with, man. I liked California. I really did. This was 1984, and yeah, it was fun. So off I go to the Venturous, which I didn't know anything about, just ships or I didn't know nothing about any of that. And so I go down there, and gosh, that was a crazy wild time. I think it was a wild time in the whole world, but in my experience in the Venturous, it was crazy, man. I got there, and there was a first class. There was an E6 running the place, and he was the scuzziest, slimiest. He looked like Barney Fife on crack. He had green teeth. He didn't bathe. He was stealing stuff from the military, and he was just a dirty, yuck human being. Anyway, it was him and two other third classes, and I was an E3 cook, brand new out of school. So this guy was I don't know, I can't even describe him, but anyway, he was useless. So I didn't even get a schedule or anything my first couple of days, and then the two guys that I were working with, the other cooks, one was named Gonzalez, and the other guy was named Clay, and we ended up all three of us ended up being super good friends because we lived through some difficult stuff. But yeah, they told me one day, I forgot which one of them was, told me one day, he's like, okay, man, you got breakfast tomorrow. I'm like, wait, what? I don't know what the hell I was doing. And yeah, man, you got breakfast. Breakfast at 6 tomorrow. It's on you. I'm like, oh shit. And I remember I woke up like I was supposed to be to work at 4:30 or something, and I woke up at like 3 in the morning, man. Took my shower, got my whites on, got all like I was all super prepared, and I went in there, uh, opened up the galley, and I didn't even know where the eggs were. I didn't know where anything was. So I'm like, okay, let me start digging around. So I started digging around, and I just kind of wung it, man. Didn't know where the menus were, any of that stuff. So I just made bacon, I made eggs, I put the bread out for toast, I made coffee, and everybody seemed to think it was perfectly normal. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And then by the time those guys got up, they showed me where the menu was, and I started making lunch. And yeah, I just kind of fell into it and just rolled from there. But that was a crazy unit, man. That was the time. That was the time in the Coast Guard. There was no women on ships yet, and I was there for like 6 or 8 months, and they started letting females on board ships, and so I went through the whole transition. Just like we talked about last time, they went through that transition where you couldn't smoke inside anymore either. But yeah, I remember there were people that, no joke, I'm not exaggerating, they would smoke while they were eating.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous, man.
On the Harry Lane, we didn't have any women. The only woman we had was the XO. And yeah, she was pretty scary looking, but like after 4 or 5 weeks out, you're thinking, oh, I guess she doesn't look too bad.
That became the joke for sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not like I just made that shit up, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely turned into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that ship, we were based out of LA, and we went from we did port calls down at Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta and Acapulco and all the way up to Seattle. We never made it to Alaska, which I was very happy about. Because all I ever heard was horror stories about 30, 40-foot waves up in Alaska.
Mhm.
And I got seasick like a son of a bitch, man. The first couple times we were underway, I was down and out for days at a time.
Still had to cook though, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so I eventually got over that and it became fine. But still, when we used to throw trash over the side,
They probably still throw trash over the side.
no, they don't. They save it all.
Well, I know we had a trash room, and on the trash room, which was filthy, but we throw organics over. We wouldn't throw.
Yeah, this is back when I was on. We threw everything over. You just ripped a hole in the trash bag and you threw it over the side so it would sink. That's it. And this whole trash bag. So yeah, sorry, environmentalists. We contributed to the big plastic island in the Pacific. But
So, what year was that? What year were you on the Ventures?
I was on the Ventures from '84 through '86, late '86.
Okay.
Yeah, and then yeah, after that, might have been even been '87. I can't remember exactly. Somewhere around in there.
Before you go off the Ventures, tell the story about the guy ordering stuff. Yeah, you told me two stories. You told me two stories about the Ventures. That's one I want you to tell. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this dude was great, man. So yeah, this guy, gosh, I'm trying to remember his name, something my tongue. You and him were like kindred spirits, man. I think when I met you, I was telling you about that guy because you reminded me of him. And right now, I cannot remember his name. But anyway, he was a radarman or a radio repairman, something, one of those tech guys. And him and I played Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and so he had his little shop was way up high on the ship, and they kept it air conditioned because he had less electronic equipment up there. And I was in the galley where it was 1,000 freaking degrees, man. Sits right over top of the engine room, and plus we got all the ovens and the steam kettles and stuff. So I was always so awesome when I could go up there and hang out in his shop and get a little cool air. So in the evenings I'd go up and we'd play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm up there one day. He's like, "Hey, man. I did some microfiche ordering today." And so did we talk about microfiche?
No, we haven't.
Yeah. So microfiche is basically, it's a sheet of plastic that's, I don't know, 5 by 5 inches, and it's got this incredibly small writing on it. And you put it in something that's similar to like an overhead projector, and it's got a magnifier on it, so it magnifies the text and you can look through. And that's how the military used to have lists and lists and lists of items that you could purchase through the supply chain. And so anyway, he said, "Yeah, I did some microfiche ordering today." I'm like, "Oh, no kidding, what'd you do?" He says,
Just interject something one time. What's available in the military makes Amazon look like a Circle K or a 7-Eleven.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything is on those microfiche, right? Everything is in the manuals. You can order pretty much anything.
Well, to give you some idea, I'm gonna make up the numbers, but I don't think I'm too far off. One microfiche sheet would contain probably 5,000 or 6,000 items, right, on this little 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 sheet of plastic. And there was an index of microfiche sheets that filled filing cabinets. I mean, so that would give you some kind of an idea.
Filled what now? Say that again.
So there were filing cabinets that were indexed by number of microfiche. So there was literally hundreds of thousands of items. So you just had to know, like, if you wanted to order a coffee mug, for example, or for the galley, that was in the 10,000. It was sort of like the Dewey Decimal System. It was like, it was categorized and very organized and all that. So you just had to know in the 10,000 group was, dishware for kitchens, and you had to go through all of that shit and find. And the descriptions were ridiculous, right? Cup, brown, plastic, 4 ounce with handle, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So anyway, let's get Gary Starks. That's his name, Gary Starks. So Gary, if you're listening to this, hit me up. I'm pretty sure Gary won't be listening to this. But anyway, so yeah, he says, "Yeah, I did some ordering today." I'm like, "Yeah, no good, what you order?" And he always ordered like, electronic stuff or whatever. I thought he was going to impress me with some, diode or something, whatever, shit that I didn't understand. He's like, "I ordered a box kite." I'm like, "What?" He's like, yeah, ordered a box kite. And I'm like, shit. He goes, yeah, and a guard dog. I ordered a guard. And then he goes, and I ordered a missile, but that didn't go through.
A missile, like a nuclear missile, right?
I don't know. It was a Patriot missile or what, they didn't have them back then, but whatever, some kind of missile. Yeah.
He didn't get the guard dog either, but he did get the box kite, right?
He did get the box kite. Yep. He got the box kite. So yeah, crazy, man.
And he built it and flew it.
I'm not sure about that. I never was part of that, but yeah, he did get the box kite, which he was very chuffed with.
Yeah. Yeah, and so just so everybody kind of understands, there were sheets where you could order box kites, dogs, and missiles.
And missiles all on the same sheet.
And God knows what else, man. So
yeah, exactly. So
Amazon, eat your heart out. And what I was saying before is rather than, I'm sure it's all computerized now, but you would take these sheets, they're called brown sheets, and you would fill these things out and you would list out the things you needed, and you had to fill out all the stuff, and you went to a storekeeper and you gave it to a storekeeper, and they would usually process it and all that kind of stuff. It was a process. The military was all, I mean, Doug mentioned in the when we talk about boot camp, the military, when we first came in, ran on paper, floated on paper.
Yes. Mm.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And I remember, not to jump ahead too much, but I remember when if you needed anything, if you just wanted to like let somebody cross the base know that they needed to come over and get their immunizations, I had to fill out a memorandum of record and send it to them. And I remember when they were like, "Hey, we're going to get rid of memorandums and we're going to start using email," and I was like, "Blasphemy!" It's like,
yeah, exactly. It'll never work.
Yeah. So no, we don't need to do all the paperwork anymore. It's going to be emails. But what about my memorandum? But what also you also told, I think you told me a story too about how you kidnapped a guy's stuffed animal.
Oh, Jesus, that was a big deal, dude. That was a big deal. It wasn't me that did the kidnapping, but yeah. So man, it's just so difficult to put into words. You meet some really strange people on these ships,
right?
And there was a guy who slept with a teddy bear. And I think the story was that was his girlfriend's or fiance's teddy bear. So anyway, whatever. You couldn't really expose that kind of stuff without getting hazed like crazy, man, right? This was macho man world. You could not be soft or vulnerable in any way. Or it's like it's like your older brother. Oh, this is just, I see you got a hole in your knee. Does that hurt? And you'll be poking it, that's exactly the mentality. So anyway, so somebody discovered that this guy had the teddy bear and everybody made fun of him for a little while and blah, blah, blah. And then strangely enough, it was Gary Starks who did the kidnapping of the teddy bear. And I didn't know anything about it. Me and Gary were best friends, and we spent a lot of time together. But I knew nothing. And next thing you know, here comes this dude. I gotta remember his name. He was one of these people who like added a French accent to his name. It's like, his name was Davy, and he said his name was Davois. He was one of them kind of guys.
Right.
And anyway, he comes onto the mess deck and he's screaming, man, "God damn it! I want to know right now. You got to tell me who has it or whatever." And I'm walk out of the galley as the mess deck is all in uproar. People are laughing at him, and it's just brutal, really. But anyway, come to find out, this dude's teddy bear was kidnapped, and I'm like, oh shit, So I don't know. Hours go by, and of course, there's rumor mill flying. It's like middle school. It really is. This guy says that guy says that, whatever. So I go up to Gary's office for D&D tonight, and he's like, "Hey man, check it out." He opens up this filing cabinet. There's the fucking teddy bear, and he duct taped his face, and he duct taped his little paws behind his back and stuff. And he took a picture of him. He cut out some clippings from the newspaper, and he spelled out a little thing. He said something like, "We want 3 sodas and 2 bags of popcorn, or the bear gets it." He left it on the dude's rack, and he was fucking furious, man. He was just like, yeah, it was crazy. But anyway, so this went on for a couple of days, and I swear to God, Gary was so good at not giving away that he was a guy, and I was staying way the hell out of this, man. I was like, nope, I was no part of it. And so anyway, I don't remember how he got caught, but somehow he got caught. And then the chief gunner's mate decided that we needed to have a trial. So we had a trial up on the flight deck, and they brought chairs and he was the judge, and whatever. And so it turned into like a fun kind of an exercise after that. But yeah,
Right.
that was a big deal for 2 or 3 days, man. The bear was the talk of the town for a couple of days.
Did you do shellback or golden dragon or anything while you're on that boat?
Not unadventurous, no. We stayed right there on the west coast, and we didn't go much past southern Mexico.
So from there you were off to Hawaii around 87?
Yeah, so that was around 87, and then I got stationed in Hawaii, which is happy to get a shore station for one, and for two,
Question before you go too far. So did you marry your first wife yet?
I did. Yep, we got married in Vegas. Actually, she moved out to California with me. She was a Key West girl, and then we just blasted off to Vegas and got married like two stupid kids do.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, so moved to Hawaii, which we were both like super psyched about. Well, for the first 2 or 3 months, and then it got boring as shit, man. Uh, um,
Well, were you land or underway?
I was land, yeah. No, I was land, which that's the main reason I wanted that job is because it was a land billet and it was in exotic Hawaii.
To interject one thing here, so when you're picking your units in the Coast Guard, because you go through what's called a detailer, and the job that Doug did was an underway job. Like most, it was usually
Yeah, it's about 70%. Yeah.
yeah, and but he gets better picks. Our SSs or cooks get better picks if they're underway or if they're outside the United States. And I want to say that Hawaii was considered OCONUS, right?
It was, yeah.
Hence the name. CONUS stood for continental U.S. and Hawaii is clearly not continental. So if you're outside the continental U.S., you get good picks. Clearly you did because you went to Key West next.
Well, yeah, I think I got lucky on that one, to be honest with you, because I mean the detailers, they try I guess this is my perception, they try to be fair, and if you're coming off of an arduous duty station, they try to give you better selections. But basically the way the system work is there's a piece of paper, and you put your top 10 picks on there, and they try to give you what you can get. And if you're coming off a real cushy duty station, that's it. You're getting underway if you're a cook, because it was about 70% of the selection was underway.
Yeah, you worked with one chief down at Key West, man. I think one of your chiefs, I think, managed to somehow finagle his way without getting underway very much.
Yeah, I think he had one underway. I can't remember that guy's name either, but he had one ship on his whole career, like 19 years or something.
It's shocking.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, off to Hawaii we go, and I was actually working. The official name was NAVCAM's East PAC, which is Naval Communications Station Eastern Pacific. And it was a Navy base, basically, and there was a small Coast Guard communication station within the Navy base. And because they allowed the Coast Guard guys to come and eat at the Navy galley, they provided them with one cook. And I got that gig, which turned out to be such a sweet gig, man. I got to play with all the Navy stuff. They get way more money than we do today. This huge kitchen, all this great equipment. To mess around with all of that stuff. But I told the Navy that I was standing inspections with the Coast Guard, and I told the Coast Guard I was standing inspections with the Navy. So I never had to do inspections. I never did any of that stuff. That was a cake job. And then the way the Navy does their marks, so part of your promotion in the Coast Guard is you get evaluated, and the Coast Guard worked on a 1 through 7 system, and the Navy worked on a 1 through 5 system. So the Coast Guard let the Navy guys rank me, and it's real common. Like it's just anybody who does their job at least halfway decent gets a 4 out of 5 in the Navy.
Right.
And if you get a 4.5 or a 5 in the Navy, you're good. You're really good at your job. So they use that same kind of a logic in the Coast Guard when they were marking me for the Coast Guard. But in the Coast Guard, 5 out of 7, that's pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. If you got a 5, you were average or maybe slightly above average. You got a 6, you were pretty dang good. If you got a 7, you were exceptional.
Yeah, they would use the term, but they use the term 4.0 sailor, right?
Yep. So 4 was right in the middle, right? So anyway, the Navy used their same logic, and I was getting 6s and 7s across the board. So I was like, great, this is awesome. But that was a really fun duty station because A, I was on shore, and B, I got to do a variety of stuff. I probably learned more there than I learned anywhere else because I was a line cook for a while, doing breakfast every day for 350, 400 people. I was in the back, making lunch in these 80 to 90 gallon steam jacketed kettles. So making big stuff. But I was working with some of these Filipinos that had been in the Navy for 20, 30 years. And they knew their stuff, man. They were very good. And I learned a lot. And then I was a night baker for probably 8 months out of that 3 years that I was there. And that was awesome, because I would go into work at 5:30 in the evening. Everybody else was just finishing up dinner and going home. And then I worked till 5:30 in the morning. And so I had a 12-hour shift, but I was only working 2 days and I was off 2 days. So that was good. But I worked with this superb baker named Nick. He was probably about 75-year-old Filipino guy, been doing this his whole life. And he was one of these guys that was like, this is old school tough, Tony, like our dads probably were at some point. He would go to take a sheet of cookies out of the oven that would have been baking in there at 375 or something, and he can't find the hot pad, so he just takes it out with his hands and puts it on the counter. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? I'd be at the medical facility crying, like I blistered on my, anyways. But no, he was a tough old bastard, man. But no, it was fun.
It's also worth mentioning, and I know what you're saying. That guy was not active duty, but I guess because he was 75. But
yeah, no, he was a contractor.
But in the Coast Guard and the Navy, like almost like I think into the 70s, 1970s and on, if you were Filipino or you were Black, African American, the only job they would let you do in the Coast Guard was a ship steward, right? You could only be a ship steward.
Or porter, right?
Yeah, porter, ship steward. And that meant that you basically you were like the mess cooks, right? And of course, when all that, probably early mid 70s, they got rid of the steward rank, and those individuals that had been ship stewards we could just lateral over to either like storekeeper and cook were the two, right? And so there were a lot of cooks and SKs, storekeepers in the Coast Guard when I came in that were originally stewards, and also Alex Haley, the guy that wrote Roots, was a ship steward in the Coast Guard. So he, it's interesting because I just remember there was so many when I came in, so many Filipino cooks in the Coast Guard.
I mean, they was a mafia, man. It really was, because those guys, they were smart. I mean, I'm not even picking on them. I love them to death. I learned so much from those guys. But what they did is it was logical, right? Like, well, geez, if you were a steward, you were working around the kitchen the whole time anyway. And usually it's a jovial, friendly environment. So that's how I got into it. Is I was learning from the cooks, even though as a mess cook, they wanted me to do their jobs. They would teach me how to do it. So that's how I learned. But the stewards did that. And then so when they got swapped over to become cooks, a whole bunch of them went in there. And then they just started sharing answers to the tests. So they all promoted together. This big mass of Filipino guys all promoted together. And God, by the time they got to E6s and E7s, it was the mafia, man. It really was. You couldn't do anything without those guys' approval. It was interesting, but lucky for me, I guess I was in their good graces.
Yeah. I never had any issues with them. I mean, they were great, so, but they definitely were dialed in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like we were talking about before, early on, like when we first came in, and I'm sure it's completely different than what we were used to when we were in, but about the time we came in, certain things changed. And one of those was, the Coast Guard was trying to trim the top out. Like there was a lot of individuals, you couldn't promote because there were people that had been in for 38 years and they didn't, and how deep to go here, and on the enlisted side, it's E1 and E1's boot camp. E2, when you come out of boot camp, you get E2, and the highest if you stay just enlisted is usually E9. There is an E10. Each rate has one E10.
Only one, yeah.
Yeah, so it's E2 through E9, and if there's a whole boatload of individuals that are E5 or E6, that pyramid is lopsided, and the Coast Guard was like, we're just going to get rid of these guys, and they made a rule that said that if you're not an E5 by 10 years, we're gonna riff you out. They called it a riff, right? And but we saw those guys.
Riff, yeah. Riff was reduction in force. That's what it stood for. Yep.
I remember pre-computer. I remember there was two. There were two. One was a boatswain mate. One was an MK. Boatswain mate and MK is machinery technician. And again, this is no shocker. The Coast Guard, the majority of the enlisted are boatswain mates and MKs. That's a lot. That's a lot of the force. And there were two in Key West, and both of those individuals, like all they did was avoid the yeoman. The yeoman is the individual that cuts your orders. They just avoided the yeoman. They did not promote. And they were able to stay in Key West. You're supposed to rotate every 4 years. They had been down there like 12, 14 years. And they just never popped up on anybody's radar. It's like their file got lost. I will tell you, and a movie we should watch, just think out loud, is I don't know if you've ever seen it. I tell you what, if you haven't seen it, then maybe we can do like one of our movie trades. Have you ever seen Cinderella Liberty?
No.
Okay, maybe we'll do a movie exchange, and I'd like you to watch that. But it's not as good as MASH. But
oh darn!
I'll leave it there.
Okay.
But anyway, promotion was very much based on how well you performed on tests, what kind of marks you got, and also availability above you. Like some jobs got clogged and you're just going to be in E5 or E6 for an extended period of time. So you may never. And E7 is probably the biggest promotion.
Yeah. So the way it kind of worked is you were marked on three things, like Tony said. One is your performance evaluation. The second is your test score, and then the third is your time and service, right? Time and grade, time and service. And so, if there was 150 guys in the cook field going up for E6, but there was only 5 E6 spots available, they only promote 5 guys. So the other 145 wait it out and take your test the next time. And then if not very many of those retire E6s the next time the cycle comes back around, now there's only 3 spots available. So those 145 guys plus the other guys start competing. So it was important, if you wanted to promote, it was important to get good marks and do really well on your test, because that means nothing you could do about time and service. But and that's where I was saying before that the trend kind of started for me in cook school, where I started taking that stuff seriously. Whereas as a teenager, I could care less. But I realized quickly, like, you got to kind of do good on the test if you want to promote. And to me, the promotion just meant more money. So I took that stuff seriously, and I always did real good.
Yeah, and you just have to do a little bit. Sometimes the cut would be 0. Sometimes they didn't promote anybody.
Yeah.
And you really, if you studied a little bit, you were probably studying more than like 75% of the people that were taking it. Yeah, no,
I studied a lot, man. I used to make my wife go around. My first wife was drive around back and forth. In Hawaii, I lived all the way down at Eva Beach, and I worked up in the pineapple fields on the top of the mountain. And so it was like a 35-minute drive back and forth to work, and we only had one car, so she would take me back and forth sometimes. And I made a bunch of flashcards, and she would quiz me as going back and forth to work. And that was just your life. That's what you did, So, but
anything else happened in Hawaii?
Oh, lots. I really got sick of my first wife. I got sick of her. And somebody said something to me once that struck a chord, and I'm like, oh yeah. And he said, and in fact, it was a guy on the Ventress. And I at the time when he said it, I didn't think anything of it. But after I moved to Hawaii with her, and we ended up not getting along very well, I remembered it. And he said, oh man, I'm getting rid of my wife, and I'm so happy I moved back to a place where her mom is, because then she can spend all the time with her mom and use mom as a crutch. Nice. And she stays out of my hair. And I'm thinking, what a dick. And then 3 years later, so I'm like, okay, let's go back to Key West, because that's where her family was. And that's how we ended up back in Key West. But yeah, that actually worked pretty well. I dumped her ass off on the island.
that conversation's coming up next time, the whole Key West, because we're closing in on Doug and Tony in Key West. So
yeah, thanks. I mean, the Ventress was kind of crazy, but Key West was off the charts, man. It was.
Oh my God!
I don't know. We could fill 5 podcasts with the stories.
Oh, we're gonna have to. No, it's funny as we're talking. There's actually, and although there's certain stories about Key West, and it's a podcast unto itself. That I'm thinking, I want to tell that story, but I do also understand that we may need to say, okay, if anybody doesn't want to hear something that's going to make them think that we were, that that you're going to need to fast forward to this time stamp because you're going to think it was just nothing. And truthfully, and I'm going to say it right now, Doug and I didn't really wade into a lot of stuff. We were basically like the chorus in the Greek theater. We just kind of were in the background going, that's fucked up. It's kind of like, did you see that?
Did you hear what this guy did?
Did you see what just happened? That was pretty fucked up. There was a lot of that. And I'm going to have to write them all down.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There was a lot. But so anything else? Anything else in Hawaii?
No, I don't think so. I got a little bit. I got into four-wheel driving out there, believe it or not, in Hawaii. Just before I left California, I bought a brand new Toyota. It was a little thing. Just a two-seater, basically, with one, like a one bench seat across it. I forgot what they would call SR5 is probably what they called them after that. That wasn't called that then, but anyway, so it was jacked up four-wheel drive, big tires and all that stuff, and I liked it. But my friend discovered that somewhere on the backside of the Navy base there was a trail system, and I think that the Navy base, because it was a communication station, it had a lot of top secret stuff. They used the Marines to guard the Navy base. So when you came into the base, there was a Marine Corps guy there checking you in, checking your ID and stuff. And so there was a contingent of Marines, and they used that back there for war games, I guess, or marching or something. But if you've never been to Hawaii, there are parts of Hawaii where the soil is like slippery red clay. It's kind of like Georgia clay. And that's what was back in this particular area. And my friend somehow, I don't know how he discovered it, but he discovered it. And Wayne Blaylock is his name, by the way. And Wayne, if you're still listening, please get in touch, because we had so much damn fun. And that's where I got in my first band. And he was a guitar player. I'm going to tell you that story real quick. But he discovered this trail. And we went off-roading back there. And this is how stupid we were. I was still in my stupid phase. We went like, I don't know, man, 300 yards down this trail. And there was a tree clearly chopped down laying across the road. What does that mean? That means do not enter. We do not want you going on this road. What did we do? We pulled out the winch and moved the log and then drove into the area. And we four-wheeled like crazy. There was this great big mud puddle. I want to say this thing's probably 3 feet deep. And we used to blast through that thing at 50 miles an hour. And the trees for 15 feet on either side were orange because we sprayed so much mud and water and shit up on them. But my truck was, I'll show you a picture next time I come over in my pickup that was so dirty with that stuff. But anyway, yeah. So last quick story, and this is not really Coast Guard related, other than I was in the Coast Guard then, and Wayne was a Navy guy. And so he played guitar, and he's like, hey, man, we should start a band. And I'm like, I don't know how to play shit. I barely even play the radio, man. And so he's like, no, you get a guitar. I'll teach you. So I go down to the music shop, and of course, Van Halen was big at the time. So I pick out this cool Eddie Van Halen guitar and an amp and all the cables and all the pedals and all the shit. I pile it all up on the counter. And it would be like $500, which is a lot of money for me back in, it was 1990, no, 86, 87 maybe. And so I'm already feeling buyer's remorse, and I haven't even paid for this yet, right? I'm thinking, oh, shit, I don't know, man. So I'm tapping my foot waiting, and the guy behind the counter is like, oh, you want to buy this stuff or what, man? I'm like, oh, I don't know, just give me a second. So I'm walking around, and I walk over to the bulletin board, and I see a flyer for a drum set. And it was like half the price of what I was about to spend. And I'm like, pulled that thing off, called that lady with the drum set, and she goes, oh, yeah, I still got it. I went over, checked it out. It was like brand spanking new. And I was a couple $100. So that's it. Now I'm a drummer. So I bought this drum set. And Wayne, he was so excited, dude. He came over and said, oh, yeah, it's cool, man. We're going to jam. And he came over. And I was in E4 at the time, and I was living in Chiefs housing because that's all they had available for me. So it was me and my wife, and we had a 3-bedroom house. And so I set up one of these rooms as my studio, right? My little music room. So Wayne comes over, brings the guitar and amp, and we start, I don't know, we agreed we were going to learn Rat. And that was our first song.
But like Round and Round?
Yeah, round and round. So I start, yeah. So I start playing, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I really have no clue. There's no such thing as YouTube, right, to learn or whatever. I didn't know anybody else who played the drums, whatever. So I'm just doing the best I can do. So we go through this a few times over the course of a few weeks, and then he goes, "Hey man, I met this dude. He's a bass player. He's going to come and play with us." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And this guy was as New York gets, man. Real dark hair, Italian, real dark eyebrows, and you get a 5 o'clock shadow 10 minutes after he shaves. One of those guys. Always wore a long black trench coat, and he rolls in with his bass, and he's super cool. And so he starts playing, and Wayne starts playing, and I'm playing, and I could see he keeps looking at me, and I'm like, "What?" And he keeps like, giving me the stink eye. And then finally he stops. He's like, "What are you doing, man?" It's like, well, I'm playing." And he's like, "Get up, man. Let me show you." And he sat down and he beat the living shit out of that drum set, man. He was like, just banging. I was like, "Holy shit. I've never seen anybody play like that." I had no clue. And so this got me fired up. I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah, I can do that." So I sat back down, and that was it, man. I just blasted off, and I was beating the shit out of the drums this way. And then we started having a lot of fun, because then it was energetic, like rock and roll. And gosh, we played together for, I don't know, 6 months or something. Never got a gig. We never actually learned more than probably 2 songs. But God, we destroyed that place, man. Neighbors hated it, get complaints, the whole thing. But we even because I was a cook, we had access, and Wayne was a cook as well. We had access. We saved eggshells, egg crates. Because we bought a case of 30 dozen at a time, and they came with these flats. Like, you can buy the flats of eggs at HEB, right? It was those things, those cardboard things. We saved them, and we nailed them up all over the room, all over that. And it did nothing. We thought it was soundproofing. It did nothing. But we did it. But anyway, yeah. So
you still like to, I mean, do you still have a set of drums?
No, I sold those in California. I sold those. I'm talking about getting a set again, but gigging's hard, man. Gigging's hard. I'll tell some gigging stories when we were in Key West. I was gigging down there.
That was fun. I remember. Yeah. So
Fisherman's Wharf, or not Fisherman's Wharf. What was that place called? I can't remember.
Oh, I remember. I went to watch you play a couple times, but it was still a club. Yeah, and you did promote to E5. You promoted to E5 either when you came out or when you left there.
I did. Yeah, when I left there, I got E5, and I think that's the only reason I got back-to-back shore units, because I promoted.
Gotcha.
Because Hawaii was shore and Key West was shore.
And also, it's all like, opportunity, luck when it comes to where you end up next. Because people that transfer, like they like the chief we talked about, he just got fortunate that all the detailer had was, and the detailer is the person who assigns you. The detailer, and usually it's a warrant officer, which we haven't talked about yet. And we probably won't, or maybe not until later, because Doug was a warrant. But usually the detailer is a warrant, and they assign you, and it's the most hated job in the Coast Guard, because everybody feels like the detailer's out to fuck them,
Yeah.
And sometimes there's detailers that are awesome, and sometimes there's detailers that are hellspawn. So anything else go down in Hawaii?
No, I mean, there's other stuff happened, but nothing very interesting, really. It was really, that was a big part of my career, really, in Hawaii.
Yeah, so you're in Key West. Now let me get to Key West. So, and all I got to do is A school. So I'm gonna do A school, and we're gonna bring it together and wrap this up. So next time we do one, it's gonna be a Key West centric. What happened in Key West? But so
we might have to make that too.
It might. Yeah, it might. Now that I'm thinking about it, because there's so there's a lot of stuff that happened to us individually, and there's a lot of stuff that happened to us definitely as a group, you and me together. Yeah. And so I go to A school off the ship. I had a guaranteed school, like I mentioned way back in my boot camp podcast, and got on the boat. I think I was required to make E3. Once I made E3, I put my name on the list. I went to the next available school, and that's what I did. So got on the school, went to Petaluma. Petaluma, as we mentioned, is probably like about an hour and a half north of San Francisco, and it's just it's focused on training, young E3, so forth, Coasties on. I think they've got Corman out there, which I was. They have the school that Doug went to is out there. ET is out there. Radar Man was out there when we were there. I don't think they don't have Radar Man anymore. Some other stuff. No, I don't think. I can't remember. There's a
TC wasn't even a thing. Yeah,
it wasn't even a thing. And the school itself, I did fine in. You first get there, I did EMT. I pretty much knew when I started doing EMT. I'm like, okay, I didn't know if I picked the right thing or not, but I could do it. I wasn't number one in the class, but I was probably always like in the top 5. It was the first place I ever saw a physician assistant. Andy Alobre was a physician assistant. I worked with him later, and I just remember when I saw him, I was like, I want to do that. Whoever that guy is, man, he looks put together. He looks like he knows. I mean, he looked like he was in charge because he should be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just a smart guy. And he actually was the whatever you want to call it, probably the program director for the EMT school. So nice guy, super nice guy. We still talk. We still communicate on occasion. And obviously, he's one of the there was 2 PAs, and he was one of them that kind of was like, yes, I want to be like that guy, right? And so now that we're kind of, him and I are kind of colleagues, that's kind of cool. But anyway, saw him, and of course he probably, when I worked with him later, probably about 5 years later, if I brought up, hey, yeah, I remember you from A school, he'd be like, hey, I don't know who the fuck you are. That would probably be his response, right? But did a lot of trips to San Francisco, had a lot of good friends that I hung out with there,
Oh, I didn't say that. You're right. I didn't say that. That's where I got my first tattoo. Oh, it's got my only tattoo, actually.
Oh, yeah.
In A school, yeah.
I got my first tattoo on the Harriet Lane, but it was tiny. The first real tattoo I got was like about maybe 8 years ago. But I have like one on my left shoulder is about the size of it. It's something like a girl, like a dolphin on my ankle kind of thing.
That's your tramp stamp.
I know, exactly. It's a little scorpion on my left shoulder. Yeah. So it's tiny, and it's right above my back piece now. So anyway, so most of the classes were fine. I can't really remember. I don't remember too much about them. But I do know, like I was probably the only one in my whole class that wasn't fucking somebody else. You know what I mean? Like that is like it's where a lot of guys and girls come together, and everybody's trying to get laid. I don't know. It just never was my thing. I know that sounds weird.
Right. I don't think so, because I was almost the same way. I mean,
yeah.
It's just that me and that girl that I was telling you about, I think we just traded off scores and ended up, that's how we come to. I wasn't looking for love or nothing like that, for sure. It just kind of like naturally came to that and had somewhat of an abrupt end.
Probably worked out for the best. But
yes, I'm sure it did.
but there was people that in my class, it was probably just like anything else in the military, it was mostly dudes anyway, and I just didn't really gravitate. I mean, I did have one friend who was a woman, but I think I friend zoned her before she's friend zoned me. I did, yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't complete. I don't want to get too much into it. I wasn't completely like a priest, but it was a thing, right? And then but everybody else, man, God, it was insane. I bought my first Nintendo there, played Nintendo, kind of got into gaming. I do know when we got towards the end of the they what they do is they bring you together and like, hey, we're gonna have you fill out dream sheets. And we had a HS1 who was our class advisor. His name was Childs. He's a good guy, fine. I mean, wasn't like, he's fine, whatever, right? But I remember him pulling us in there and him saying, right now the core rate is at 110%. There's 110% HS3s out there. And so every one of you is going to a large unit. And the Coast Guard, that would be things like Cape May, the boot camp we talked about, the academy. Governor's Island was a big deal. Now it's closed, but West Coast, there was like Kodiak and Alameda and all those places. Long Beach, maybe, I guess.
Long Beach, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want any of that places. So I wanted to go to I wanted to go to D7. So and D7 is Florida. I wanted to go to Florida. I didn't get to go there in boot camp. I want to go to Florida. So I just went right down the list, and I was like, and honestly, when you start going down the East Coast of Florida, I think the first place maybe is like Miami is the first place where they have, and there's 2 units in Miami. Which is pretty low on Florida, but there's Air Station Opelika. base Miami, and then you go down the Keys, and there's Key West, and you go back up the other side. And there's Tampa. There was a corpsman in St. Augustine, all up through. I think there was maybe there was one or two, and the air station, maybe it was maybe I put air station Mobile. Maybe Mobile or something, right? And then the detailer came. The detailer didn't do this regularly, but it was Michael Canatori, who I'm friends with on Facebook, as a matter of fact. I think it was Canatori. There was Canatori and there was Midbury, but I don't think it was Midbury. I think I'm pretty sure it was Canatori came out. And he actually, it was like his last A school. He thought, oh, it'd be really cool if I read off the assignments, right? But I remember Childs pulled me into his office and was like, hey, I told you 110%. None of these are the places I talked about. I would like you to, and he was kind of like, I'm not going to tell you to do it, but I would like you to change this so it aligns with what I told you to do, right? And I remember telling him, like, Petty Officer Childs, it's called it, and this is one of my few times in my life where I was like, I'm going to stand up to the man, right? I said, it's called a dream sheet for a reason, okay? I don't want to go to Governor's Island. I don't want to go to Cape May, And he's like, suit yourself, okay? And he goes, but you're not getting any of those places. And I'm thinking, hey, whatever, so what? I get Cape May and whatever.
Can't hurt to ask you.
But I remember Canatori comes there, and one of my friends, his name was Michael. Like he was married at the time, and he had like said, I just cannot. My wife will divorce me if I go to the West Coast, right? And so he's going right down the list of where everybody's going, and I want to say Stanley was made for some reason. He even though he's alphabetically, he was under me for some reason. I think he came first, but I just remember it that way. I'm probably wrong, but Canatori was like his last name, and he goes Kodiak, Alaska. And I remember Michael was like literally, which is about as West Coast as you can get, right? And I remember Michael going like, "What the fuck?" I mean, literally, he like lose, and everybody's like, "Don't do that. You're getting in trouble. You're gonna get in trouble." And I think somehow he managed to. I can't remember either. He managed to get out of it. He managed to. Wow. Not that he didn't deserve it. He was a good guy, and. I don't think he went to Kodiak. I think he ended up going like either Cape May. I have to text him or something. I can't forget. I message him on Facebook. But they got to me, and the guy was like, he's like, you're going to Key West, and I was like, hell yes, man. I was like,
how the hell did that happen?
Well, kind of like your discussion about going to Isla Morada. That was my little secret, right? Yeah. And I can tell you right now, out of everybody, the 24 so guys and ladies I went to A school with, I scored. I got exactly what I wanted, man. Everybody else went to, those big units, and not that they're bad. I mean, it's land, but Key West was, I had linchpin moments in my career, and that was one of them, man. Changed who I was, but yeah, got my orders. There were some other things that happened there, but most of us is kind of like bullshit stories, that probably can't really tell anyway. But but yeah, so I ended up driving from San Francisco all the way down to Key West, and I think the reason I ended up with, I think at the time they had two corpsmen down there, and the corpsman down there, Kyle, who's a great guy, amazing HS1. He put in for another corpsman, and how it was back then. Usually when you did something like that, you had a change in your strength, in your numbers. Took a lot of paperwork, but somehow he managed to pull some strings. I don't think we were even ever really billeted for 3, but he managed to pull some strings. I got down there, so there I was, Key West.
Well, yeah, lucky that he did that too, because we had the Cuban crisis down there at that time. So
that may have had a lot to do with it. Yeah, that may have a lot to do with it, because but that was 3.5, 4 crazy freaking years, man. So yeah, well, I'm actually gonna have to make notes about that, because every time I think about, like you just mentioned, the Cuban crisis, and I have like a few stories about that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and then I also got involved in search and rescue down there, a lot of search and rescue, and that was crazy. So. Yeah,
I'll tell you my body bag story when we do the Key
West.
Well,
you told us about the first time you saw a floater.
Oh no, this is different.
Okay,
it's different. I'll save that for then. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. So next Coast Guard episode, Doug and Tony in Key West.
Yeah, which is a highlight for us. I'm not sure anybody else cares, but yeah.
I got to tell you, honestly, for those listening, the first 2 episodes, or we'll say the first couple episodes, or whatever. Yeah, it's a lot of freaking chitty and chatty and all that. What the fuck? But with us at Key West, there's some crazy shit. Okay,
Yeah,
and let's just go ahead and say right now. Okay, it's going to be unvarnished. We're going to tell some stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll start with a little disclaimer. Look, if you're sensitive or you're thinking, oh, these 2 guys are they're not misogynistic or anything like that, though, things are going to change. Okay,
Yeah.
It was a different time. Okay,
It was. Yeah.
It was.
Well, it was not just that, but I think it's important to, and we can probably say this again at the beginning of the next one, but I'm not embellishing. When we tell these stories about Key West, this is as clearly as I can remember this stuff, and it's pretty clear because you and I've talked about it many times since.
Sure. I mean, I'll do that sometimes where I'll go like, hey, you remember when, and I'll even just like drop it. You remember when blank? And I'm just like, and I'll just leave it there and let it hang. And you'll say, yeah, this. I'm thinking, that's right. That's exactly what happened. That's how I remember it, So, yeah. But,
all right. Well, that's enough precursor. It's enough teaser for the, next one.
So, I was going to mention pre-Key West. And you just talked about Key West before. Like when you were there the first time, though, there was like weed everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it was. That's when we first started really doing drug busts and stuff, and they would just bring it right up to the pier, and we would offload it to E3s and stuff because basically it was just labor.
Yeah.
It was, and it'd stink, and well, like I said, they were doing piss tests back then, but they would tell you when they were doing it. Like, okay, next Monday we got a piss test, that kind of stuff. So I guess they had to, just kind of fade into it rather than just drop it on everyone because they would have lost half their workforce.
Yeah. Well, and I think you even told me that it was pretty easy to, like, if you were just, I mean, not that people were grabbing handfuls and stuffing in their pants, but it wasn't hard to.
Well, because the bales, because a lot of times the bales were floating, and they would get loose, and so there was loose ganja just in the boat bilges and stuff like that. So guys were collecting that stuff sometimes, but it depends on who. Just like anything, it depends on who was there. Some guys were like super strict about it, and other guys were like, whatever, take it if you want it, I don't care. It was just a totally different culture than what most people think of as the military. It was almost like MASH,
Yeah, well, and again, that had changed in the time when I got down there. When I was there was no, like I said, when I was on the ship, we made that cocaine bust, and of course it was cocaine. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
That shit locked down. There was like, no, you weren't like, hey, can I go over and look at the cocaine? Yeah, if you want me to freaking hit you in the face with a stick, you can go over and walk right over. and but I thought we were friends. We're not friends right now,
Yeah.
They weighed that stuff, and they were very, but even that had changed. But okay, let's shut up and let people get back to their day.
Get back to your lives. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we have for this one. We've actually been talking for a little bit over an hour. And travel safe, Doug.
Thanks, man. Back to NOLA.
And everybody, we'll talk to you next time.
He looked like Barney Fife on crack.
That was pretty fucked up.
Round and round, round and round.
This has been an Analog Spectrum production and presentation. As always, it means a ton to both me and Doug that you took time to listen to our show. We enjoy making these things, but we get a massive kick out of knowing we have a few friends hearing what we have to say. This is about the 4th outro I've done, so let's keep it short. Please subscribe, share, and if you like what you're hearing, give us a top-notch 5-star review. Finally, feel free to email us, Facebook message us, or tweet at us. We love feedback and criticism, as long as it's constructive, and we're always interested in new show ideas. Well, that's all I have for now. The shows will keep coming, I promise you that. Thanks again for hanging out with me and all of us at Analog Spectrum. We'll see you again soon.